Ever since I've had the Sony FX30, I've used it with a cage, and for the vast majority of that time, that has been the Smallrig FX3 FX30 cage. I have since gotten the Tilta FX3 FX30 cage. I'm thinking I'm going to stick with the Smallrig, and I'm going to explain why. So first of all, just overall, they are both great, and if I got the Tilta one first, I would probably have no problems with it. And the only reason that I did get the Tilta one is because I made some videos for Tilta, and I didn't have a Tilta cage in my camera, so they obviously didn't want a Smallrig cage in their videos, so they sent me one of these. And as I said, it's totally fine. It does what it needs to do. There's just some things I like about the Smallrig one better. Now, there are obviously other companies that make cages for, the Sony FX3 and FX30. I haven't tried the Condor Blue one, but it's probably pretty similar to each of these. And yeah, when it comes to disclosure, I guess, yeah, Tilta sent me this, but have nothing to do with this video. I bought the Smallrig cage when I first got my FX30. If you want to check out Smallrig, there's a link in the description. I'll put a link to the Tilta one as well. There is also a link to Condor Blue's website if you want to check out their one as a third comparison, but I don't have one, so I can't compare it. Anyway, let's talk about the differences. So one of the biggest things that I notice with cages in general and putting cages on cameras is just sort of the ergonomics of how the grip feels in particular. That was one of the very first things I noticed with my A7 IV when I first got that it just felt more comfortable to hold using a cage, and that's for two reasons. One, it actually extends down past the grip a little bit, so these Sony bodies can be a little bit too short for, I feel like, the majority of people. I feel like most people complain about their pinky falling off. It's a little bit too short for my pinky would sort of fall off, so having that extra little bit of grip can really help. And then also the part of the cage that actually wraps around the grip that your hand goes onto, on the Smallrig one, it is a little bit more comfortable. It's a little bit more rounded and just a little bit more soft in the hand, I guess. But that's a very minor issue. And how both of these cages bolt on is pretty unique, I guess, to the FX3 and FX30 because they have these 1/4-20 holes in the body. So you can actually use 1/4-20 screws to screw it in the entire way rather than just one 1/4-20 in the bottom and then like one or two other little screws like on a lot of other mirrorless cameras. One benefit that the Smallrig one has though is the screw in the bottom, the 1/4-20 in the bottom to go into the tripod mount that's just built into the body. It's captive screw, whereas on the Tilta one, there's no screw in there. It's fully separate, and it's actually a little bit annoying having these loose screws. Now, to be fair, the Smallrig one has two loose ones as well. They have the ones that go on the side, but the Tilta one has all three, and the one that goes in the bottom is very slightly different to the ones on the sides. So it's just like a little bit like you just have to look at it for a second to figure out which one's which. But it would just be nice if it was just a captive screw. But again, not a huge deal. Speaking of the bottom of the camera though, on the Smallrig one here, you can see we have a bunch of 1/4-20 and a 3/8 inch mount right there. So when you're screwing in a tripod plate like this, a lot of these come with one 1/4-20 and one 3/8 inch screw, which is great. The Tilta one, on the other hand, it does have a 3/8 inch screw here, but it's not in the middle. So it just feels a little bit wrong using that rather than the ones in the middle. So if you are going to put it in the middle, you're going to have to use two 1/4-20 screws rather than one of each. I don't get what the rationale behind that was, but it is what it is. Again, another very minor gripe that I have with the tilt cage. Another difference that I kind of feel like doesn't really matter that much is the cold shoe. Now, the cold shoe mount on the Smallrig cage is on the corner and it is a bit on an angle. So if you are to put like a mic or something on there, it's going to be a little bit further off to the side. Whereas if you're going to put a mic onto the Tilta cage here, then one, it actually slides in from the front rather than the back for some reason, but it's going to be straight up and down. So it's just going to be like above the corner rather than out to the side. Again, not a big deal, just a slight difference. Now, because the FX3 and FX30 come with or can come with the XLR top handle, which I'm actually using to record audio right now, these aren't full cages. They don't go all the way around. And that has two benefits. One means you can just swap out the top plate that comes with the cage for that top handle. And it also means that all the buttons on the top of the camera here never get covered by a cage. And speaking of that top plate, both of these cages come with a top plate with just screws in to the same holes that the top handle screws into, just regular 1/4-20 screws. Pretty easy to use, as you would expect. And once you've screwed it on, they both provide some mounting points for additional accessories like monitors or handles. They both are a NATO rail, so you can slide a handle onto there or any other NATO accessories. The Smallrig one has 2 1/4-20s and an RE locating pin 3/8 inch mount on the top, and it has a locking pin for the NATO rail. The Tilta one, on the other hand, does not have any 3/8 inch mounts, but it does have a cold shoe in the middle. So you could just slide, a mic, for example, into the top of that. And then that cold shoe also has a 1/4-20 hole in the middle of it. So both of these top plates are totally fine. I have no real issues with either of them. They both have captive screws, which is nice. I feel like the Tilta one is a little bit easier to screw on and off, but again, not a huge difference. What is a huge difference though is the HDMI clamp that you can get for each of these. This is the Smallrig one. Now, this doesn't necessarily come with the cage, but if you get like one of the cage kits, for example, like I got the kit for the FX30, which comes with the handle extension and the HDMI clamp. How this HDMI clamp works is it clamps down onto the HDMI cable using this mechanism on the top, and basically that closes the jaw, which just pinches on to the HDMI cable. Well, not the cable part, but you know what I mean. And what that does is that prevents the cable from moving inside the port, so it can't move side to side, wiggle, or even come out. Like, you're not going to be able to pull that out. Whereas with the Tilta one, it's kind of a weird one. And I know there's other ones that are similar to this, but I don't really like this one. How this one works is you screw it on to the side here. The first issue I have with this is it's not as secure like on there. Like, it's a much smaller screw. This one's just a 1/4-20. This is not. And it also can sort of move within that. Not a fan of that. But how this one works is the HDMI cable will go into the camera there, and then this mechanism, you'll sort of have to like squeeze it and then tighten it. But what it does is it prevents it from sort of moving inside the port itself, but it doesn't prevent anything from coming out. It's not going to save you there. So I kind of feel like it's not pointless, but much, much less useful. So I think the Smallrig one just wins that by far. It is slightly bulkier though, so, it can get in the way more so than the other one, but I think it's just so much better that it's worth it. And one thing that, again, doesn't necessarily come with the cage, but can come with a kit, or if you get them separately, are these hand straps. Now, I get asked about these hand straps all the time. This is the Smallrig Black Mamba hand strap. It came with the FX30 kit, and I really like it. It's nice and soft. It's very comfortable, very adjustable. You can adjust the top and the bottom. The only annoying thing is this strap you can't really do anything with. It's just sort of there in the way that I just tuck it in, and it's not too bad. But overall, I really like this. The Tilta one, on the other hand, again, it doesn't come with the cage, but you can get it. I got it in the kit because it came attached to this power handle that came in that Pro Kit V2, I think it was, for the FX30 or the FX3. And this handle is a little bit stiffer. It's going to functionally work, just like you need this one to. It's just slightly less comfortable because it is less soft, and it's also way harder to adjust and to take on and off because it only has one strap. You have to, first of all, undo these buttons, and then these are just loose, which I don't see the point of that. And then you have to like unbuckle and then take the loop all the way through to adjust it. And then, if you want to take it off, you have to take the whole thing out. Whereas this one, because it has two separate straps, one on the top, one on the bottom, you just undo each of them and then take it out of the loop on the cage. So Smallrig strap, so much better than the Tilta hand strap. The one benefit that the Tilta one does have though is the strap is a lot shorter and it's a lot stiffer, so it just sort of is out of the way. Plus, that little button fastener thing kind of holds it even more out of the way. So I guess that's good. And then on the bottom of each of these cages, there is a little magnetic tool, which is basically like a flat screwdriver, and there's just some magnets in the bottom of both the cages. And then this is used to attach the cage or attach or detach other parts, or you could use it for anything that you need a flathead screwdriver for. And again, the Smallrig one, it's just a little bit better because you can slide it in and slide it out, whereas with the Tilta one, it's fully enclosed. No, it's not. Oh my gosh, I'm making all these points and then realizing that they're not actually points. I just realized you can slide this one out, but it's still not as easy. Yeah, again, very minor difference. I think the Smallrig one's slightly better though. Something that's really common with cages in general is they have an Arca Swiss rail on the bottom of them. And the benefit of that is you can slide it straight into an Arca Swiss mount or tripod or a base plate. Like if I take the base of my rig here, I'm just gonna get rid of this battery, Smallrig VB99 Pro on the Condor Blue V-Mount Pro, in case you were wondering. But here I have the Tilta dual base plate. So it has both Arca Swiss and Manfrotto mounting, so you can do either. I generally have a quick release plate on the bottom of my FX30, so I use the Manfrotto style, but you can slide either of these cages in via the Arca mount and it'll just lock in that way. The downside of this is it doesn't quite go to the middle, which is a little bit annoying, which is why I don't do it. But as you can see, I could just slide that straight in on the Tilta one, you know, Tilta cage onto a Tilta base plate. If I take the Smallrig one, I can't just slide it in. I have to press the button to release it. And that is because of the little safety pins in here that sort of prevent sliding in and out where you don't want it. And this cage just is not built with that in mind on both sides. This has a little tab on both ends there. I'll try and get a close up in B-roll here so you can see, but this one has one, the Tilta one has two. So very minor difference, but again, a difference. That's the one that the Tilta one is slightly better, but I imagine that's mainly just because this is a Tilta base plate. I'm guessing Smallrig base plates would work better with Smallrig cages anyway. And another thing that the Tilta one actually does better is it has more locating pin holes. As you can see just looking here, there's 2 1/4-20 mounts, yet there's so many locating pins around them, which is really nice to have. Like, it doesn't take away at all having those extra locating pins, but it is really nice to have those locating pins there for when you do have some sort of mount that does have locating pins, because having them twist on you is super annoying. Now, the Smallrig one still does have some locating pins. It has 1 1/4-20 with locating pins on the right side, a 3/8 inch mount with locating pins on the left side, and then one on the top plate, like I mentioned before, whereas the Tilta one just sort of has a bunch of them around, which is just helpful. And then speaking of those mounts, the Tilta one has a 3/8 inch with locating pins mount on the right, whereas the Smallrig one has one on the left. Now, that's probably not a big deal, but depending on what you're trying to mount on there, when it comes to getting the battery in and out of the Sony FX30, on these cameras, you need to pull the tab here and then it'll open, but oh no, it didn't open because you have a little battery door here because the cage follows the contours of the handle, so you need to have that sort of little door there that can open around that battery door. The Tilta one, on the other hand, is literally just a rectangle, so it just sticks out more, so you don't need that battery door. You can just open and close the battery door with no issues, so I guess that's sort of a benefit for Tilta, although that does mean there's a little bit extra sticking out the front, if that matters. Not a huge deal, but it's a difference. And then I think probably the best thing that the Tilta cage has that the Smallrig one doesn't is you can actually just turn it into a half cage really, really easily. There are 2 screws on the bottom here that if you take them out, you can separate it at that point. So you can have either the right side, not that you're really gonna put the right side on most of the time, it'd be more using the left side because the left is attached to the bottom. So you could keep the Arca rail, the NATO rail on the side, and the cold shoe on the top, along with, you know, a couple of mounting points. And then you would still just have the bare handle of the FX30 with no cage or anything like that. So if you want a half cage for some reason, the Tilta one can do both. The Smallrig one is just full cage, but again, it's more like a 3/4 cage because it doesn't go over the top. That's what the top plate's for. But yeah, that'll be it for this one. I kind of thought there was more of a point to this video, but I've noticed while filming it that there's actually much less of a difference than I thought. I still do prefer the Smallrig one overall though, so I'm going to keep using it for the most part. Again, links in the description to both of these, and there's one to Condor Blue as well in case you want to check any of them out. Go watch one of my rig build videos somewhere. I've changed some stuff since then, but you know, let me know if you want me to do another one. Do the other things. Okay, bye.